Do you think you already know someone who failed to succeed in life? Then meet Gi-hun, a man who lost almost everything: debts, opportunities, confidence, and yet ended up in a deadly game that would test every human limit. But here is the paradox. It is precisely in the worst situations that he discovers strengths no one imagined existed. Get ready, because what seems like just an ordinary man about to be crushed by the world will teach you about courage, strategy, and survival in a way you never expected. And here is the question. If you were in his place, could you act the same, or would you succumb to fear? If you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character, subscribe to the channel now so you do not miss any video. Where in the world are you watching this video from right now? Leave your answer in the comments. Gi-hun is that kind of guy. Life seems to test every day, you know? An ordinary middle-aged man with problems any of us could have, but that seem to multiply when you least expect it. He lives in Seoul, struggling to support his mother and daughter, but always stumbling over debts and impulsive decisions. It is easy to identify with him, who has never felt a step behind trying to balance responsibilities with shelved dreams. Despite financial difficulties, Gi-hun maintains a charismatic and engaging demeanor. He has a smile that hides a lot of frustrations and a somewhat stubborn hope that things will improve. It is that mix of vulnerability and resilience that makes us root for him, even when he makes questionable decisions. Like that friend you know will get into trouble, but you cannot help liking before the game began. Gi-hun already felt the weight of personal failure, losing his job, not being able to pay bills, feeling invisible in the world. All of this puts him in a state of constant emotional fragility. It is like walking a tightrope. At any moment, the ground could disappear. And it is precisely this vulnerability that will shape his most dramatic choices later. But do not be mistaken, he is not just a defeated man. Gi-hun has a resilient side that appears in small gestures. He takes care of his mother, tries to reconnect with his daughter, and even when he stumbles, he still looks for opportunities to change his life. This contrast between fragility and silent strength creates a deep and relatable character who has never tried to get back on their feet even when everything seemed lost. His daily life is full of frustrating routines and small, temporary victories. Each day is a cycle of small disappointments that erode self-esteem, but he keeps trying. This constant struggle makes the audience connect instantly with him. It is impossible not to feel empathy for someone who, even at the limit, still searches for hope. Another interesting point is how Gi-hun handles relationships. He is sociable, likes to help, but also carries the fear of fully opening up. It is that feeling of, if I show too much, I will get hurt. This makes his interactions human, real, and full of nuances, because he is not perfect. Nor a traditional hero, he is human. Gi-hun's playful side also appears in small moments of self-deprecating humor. He laughs at himself even when everything is falling apart, and that makes us laugh along with him. This touch of lightness is essential to create empathy and balance the emotional tension of the story. It is like saying, hey, everyone stumbles, and it is okay to laugh at it. And so, we enter Gi-hun's universe, an ordinary man full of flaws, hopes, and contradictions, about to be thrown into an extreme world that will test every piece of his humanity. He is someone who could be next to us on the subway, in the bank line, or at any street corner. And that is what makes his journey so powerful and disturbing. We barely know what is coming. Conflict with debts and personal failures. Gi-hun lives with the constant weight of debts, as if they were shadows following him at every step. Each overdue bill is a reminder that he failed to provide for himself and for those he loves. This pressure erodes his confidence and turns simple decisions into major dilemmas. It is easy to relate who has never felt that suffocating anxiety when opening a bill. He feels in his skin that life does not forgive, but giving up is not an option. Debts affect not only his wallet, but also his self-esteem. He feels trapped, powerless, like a character in a maze with no way out. Each attempt to improve seems to fall apart, increasing the sense of defeat. And it is precisely in this cycle of frustration that Gi-hun shows his rawest vulnerability, the one that moves the audience. Who has never felt invisible for being emotionally and financially broke, but he is not a defeated man without fight. Gi-hun still tries small strategies to survive, like gambling or taking improbable jobs. These are risky choices, showing his impulsive and human side, always seeking a way out. This behavior reminds us that often, necessity leads us to do things we would not do under other circumstances. The conflict with personal failures also reveals itself in his relationship with his daughter and mother. Gi-hun feels guilty for not being able to provide or protect those he loves. It is a universal feeling that resonates with anyone who has ever felt unable to meet the expectations of others. This guilt shapes his future decisions and influences how he relates to the challenges of the game. Each small failure seems amplified in society's eyes. Gi-hun feels the judgment of others, the pressure to be successful, and the constant comparison with people who always seem to win in life. It is a silent, internal conflict that not everyone notices, but that shapes his psyche. This kind of tension is something many of us carry daily, even if no one sees it. Interestingly, his financial failures also reveal his humanity in an unexpected way. He still helps friends, shows empathy, and keeps dreams alive, even amid chaos. This teaches us that failing does not mean losing your essence. On the contrary, it can reinforce values and relationships. Gi-hun remains upright even in crisis, and that creates immediate identification with the viewer. His constant struggle is almost cinematic. Each stumble, each mistake creates tension and expectation. We root for him, even knowing life keeps putting him back on the ground. This feeling of "let's see what he does now" is what keeps the audience engaged. Gi-hun reminds us that sometimes the hardest battle is just surviving everyday life. And so, the conflict with debts and personal failures becomes fuel for his choices in the game. He enters round 6, carrying not only financial problems, but a history of defeats and painful lessons. Each step in the game will be influenced by this past, and we can barely imagine how he will deal with the challenges still to come. Family relationships and emotional guilt. Gi-hun carries the responsibility of taking care of his mother and daughter, an emotional burden that often seems greater than he can bear. Each wrong decision, each delay or failure turns into guilt. It is that feeling of constantly owing love and security to those who matter most. Who has never felt that? No matter how much you do, it is never enough for family members. This pressure shapes much of his behavior and choices. The relationship with his mother is especially complex. She depends on him, but also represents a silent demand, a daily reminder that time is passing and he needs to pull himself together. Gi-hun feels he fails at every moment, even in small things, and this constant tension erodes his confidence. It is a subtle but powerful conflict that will define many of his actions in the game. With his daughter, guilt mixes with longing and desire for reconnection. He remembers promises he made and did not keep, missed moments and wasted opportunities. Distance does not diminish emotional responsibility. On the contrary, it amplifies the sense of failure. It is a realistic drama that anyone who has ever been away from someone they love can deeply understand. This guilt manifests in unexpected ways. Gi-hun hesitates in decisions, procrastinates opportunities, and even underestimates himself. He constantly weighs the impact of his actions on those he loves. It is like carrying a backpack full of stones. Each step seems harder, and pressure increases with every mistake. This internal struggle creates narrative tension and immediate empathy with the audience. But not everything is suffering. There are also moments of tenderness and connection. Gi-hun tries to get closer, shows affection, and even in failures, strives not to disappoint completely. This balance between guilt and love makes his family relationships so human and relatable. He is not perfect, but he is real, and that creates a powerful emotional bond with the audience. Family guilt also drives him in a contradictory way. While it paralyzes him, it also motivates him to enter the game, risking his life for a chance to change everything. This internal paradox is fascinating. Love and fear mix, creating complex decisions no one can predict. The audience feels this tension, almost as if living each choice with him. Interestingly, even carrying guilt, Gi-hun still manages to maintain empathy for other players. He understands suffering, identifies fragility, and acts with humanity. This reinforces the idea that his family relationships, although conflictive, shaped a character capable of connecting with others, even in extreme situations. It is a silent lesson on how love can generate strength. And so, the family conflict intertwines with his other struggles, debts, failures, and insecurities. Each step Gi-hun takes in round 6 is influenced by this emotional weight. We barely know how he will use this guilt, whether as a weakness or a weapon, in the upcoming challenges. Friendships and distrust in the game. In round 6, Gi-hun quickly realizes that trusting others is not as simple as it seems. Each player carries their own intentions and secrets, and the line between friendship and betrayal is thin. This initial distrust tests his character, forcing him to evaluate who really deserves his trust. It is a dilemma many of us face in extreme situations where quick decisions can change everything. He clings to some players, such as Sang-woo and Sapyeok, but this trust comes with constant fear of being deceived. Gi-hun learns that vulnerability in the game can be a deadly weakness. It is fascinating to observe how he tries to balance empathy and prudence, showing that even in danger, he still seeks human connection, a balance many struggle to find in real life as well. Friendship also serves as a mirror for himself. By helping others, Gi-hun realizes his own strengths and limitations. It is through these relationships that he begins to rebuild his self-confidence, even amid chaos. Each act of solidarity is a reminder of who he is outside the game, a man capable of compassion, not just survival, but distrust is always present. Gi-hun quickly realizes that not everyone follows moral rules. This conflict between trusting and protecting oneself creates constant tension. Each decision becomes a psychological test, forcing him to use not only intelligence, but also intuition. And we, the audience, feel every moment of hesitation alongside him. The bond with Sapyeok is particularly revealing. They share fears, losses, and hopes, and this relationship shows Gi-hun's most human side. He learns to open up and rely on someone else, even in an environment where trust seems suicidal. It is a dynamic that deeply connects with the audience, touching on the universal need for partnership and solidarity. At the same time, he observes Sang-woo, who mixes friendship and betrayal. This contrast forces Gi-hun to understand the limits of trust and to assess hidden intentions. He begins to develop a strategic sense of who deserves loyalty and who represents danger without losing his humanity. It is a cruel but necessary lesson for survival. Interestingly, this experience with friendships and distrust changes his perception of himself. Gi-hun realizes that the ability to trust and collaborate is a strength, not a weakness. It is a lesson many only learn in extreme situations when the risk is real and immediate. And it is precisely this learning that will determine his future choices. And so, his relationships in the game are a reflection of the delicate balance between empathy and self-protection. Each friendship becomes a test, each gesture of trust a calculated risk, and we can barely imagine how this learning will affect his decisions in the even more dangerous challenges ahead. Fear and extreme survival. In round 6, fear is a constant presence for Gi-hun. Each game, each challenge, is a real threat of death, and adrenaline mixes with panic. He feels the weight of survival in every step, and this makes us reflect. How would we react if we were in his place? It is a fear that goes beyond the physical, also affecting the mind and self-confidence. Fear forces Gi-hun to think quickly, to create strategies, and to trust instincts that once seemed dormant. He realizes that to survive, it is necessary to balance courage and caution. Each decision can be the difference between life and death, and the audience follows each tenth step, almost holding their breath alongside him. But fear also reveals internal vulnerabilities. Gi-hun remembers his previous life, his failures, and insecurities, and realizes that survival requires more than physical strength. It demands facing one's own demons. It is fascinating to observe how external terror awakens internal reflections, showing that even in the most brutal struggle, there is room for self-knowledge. With each game, he learns about human limits. Gi-hun feels pain, exhaustion, and despair, but also discovers reserves of courage he did not know existed. Extreme fear transforms him, shapes his emotional intelligence, and his ability to make decisions under pressure. It is an intense test that challenges any previous concept of endurance. Interestingly, even in desperate situations, Gi-hun maintains his humanity. He does not become a monster, nor does he completely abandon his principles. Fear is real, but he still cares about others, helping and protecting whenever possible. This duality between survival instinct and empathy is what makes his character so engaging. Fear also creates narrative tension for the audience. Each moment of uncertainty makes us question, what if it were us in his place? This identification generates deep emotional engagement, making each victory and failure more impactful. It is like being at the limit alongside Gi-hun, feeling the same pressure, the same suspense. Extreme survival also forces complex moral choices. Gi-hun faces dilemmas where there is no absolute right or wrong, only consequences. This confrontation between instinct and ethics reveals the character of the player and keeps the audience glued to the story, reflecting on what we would do under extreme pressure. And so, fear and extreme survival shape Gi-hun in profound ways. He not only fights against physical danger, but also against his own limits, doubts, and humanity. Each step in the game transforms him, preparing him for the next challenges and dilemmas that are still to come. Guilt and traumatic losses, Gi-hun faces losses that mark him deeply, leaving emotional scars that weigh more than any physical wound. Each death around him is not just a danger but a cruel reminder of life's fragility. He feels guilty for surviving while others perish, a sensation that corrodes his inner peace. Who has never asked themselves, what if I could have done something differently? He carries this question constantly. Guilt is an invisible weight that accompanies him in every decision. Gi-hun blames himself for trusting the wrong people or hesitating in critical moments, believing he could have saved someone. This internal conflict transforms each victory into a mix of relief and remorse, showing how trauma shapes human behavior in a complex way. It is something that makes us reflect on our own choices. Some losses hit him personally, such as seeing allies sacrifice themselves or be betrayed. These traumatic experiences force him to face the darker side of life, that we cannot always control outcomes, no matter how hard we try. Gi-hun learns, in the worst way, that survival and guilt go hand in hand. Trauma also awakens empathy. By feeling pain and guilt, Gi-hun connects even more with the other players, understanding their fears and limitations. This sensitivity increases his humanity, showing that even in extreme situations, consciousness and heart can guide decisions. It is a lesson on how tragedies shape the way we relate to the world. With each loss, Gi-hun must deal with the psychological impact. He feels anxiety, fear, and constant internal pressure that affects his judgment. Emotional tension becomes almost palpable, and the audience feels every drop of this stress, immersing themselves in the narrative as if living alongside him. It is interesting to note how guilt drives him to act. Even when the pain is overwhelming, Gi-hun finds the strength to continue, to fight, to try to prevent further tragedies. This paradox, feeling weak and, at the same time, finding courage, is one of the elements that make his arc so human and inspiring. The weight of losses and guilt also transforms him into someone more strategic and cautious. He learns to assess risks, plan moves, and protect those he loves. Each decision is marked by the painful experience of the past, making his survival more conscious and calculated. And so, guilt and traumatic losses become silent forces that shape Gi-hun, preparing him for future challenges. He carries the pain but also uses it as learning, an internal drive that will still play a crucial role in the decisive moments to come, evolution and self-discovery. Throughout Round 6, Gi-hun undergoes a profound transformation. Each challenge, each extreme choice, forces him to discover strengths and abilities he did not even know he possessed. It is as if fear, guilt, and losses have been catalysts to reveal his true essence. The audience follows not only the physical struggle but an intense and immersive journey of self-discovery. He learns to trust himself and make quick decisions without relying entirely on others. This internal growth is fascinating because it shows that evolution emerges from chaos and risk. Gi-hun discovers that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. A powerful lesson that resonates with anyone who has faced difficult situations in life. Throughout the game, Gi-hun also realizes his priorities. He understands the value of human connections, solidarity, and empathy, learning to balance survival with humanity. It is as if each painful experience has been a practical life lesson. This awareness transforms his character, making him more strategic and emotionally intelligent. Self-discovery also reveals his resilient side. Gi-hun realizes that failures do not define who he is, but how he responds to them. Each fall in the game becomes an opportunity to learn, adjust strategy, and grow. This process of reconstruction is something everyone can relate to because we all face challenges that shape us daily. He learns to deal with fear and uncertainty more consciously. Before, panic dominated his decisions. Now he evaluates risks and considers consequences without losing his essence. This maturity is a direct result of the traumatic experiences and conflicts he lived in the game, showing that evolution and suffering are deeply connected. Another fascinating aspect is how he begins to lead subtly. Gi-hun inspires other players through actions, empathy, and silent courage. He does not seek the spotlight, but his personal growth naturally makes him a point of reference. It is an example of how self-discovery often generates positive influence without conscious effort. Curiously, despite growth, he still maintains his vulnerability. Gi-hun does not become invincible. On the contrary, he learns to accept his weaknesses as part of the process. This honesty with himself is what makes his journey believable and human, allowing the audience to connect even more deeply with his trajectory, and so Gi-hun emerges from each challenge with more self-knowledge and resilience. He is no longer just an ordinary man struggling against debts and fears. He becomes someone who understands his limits, values, relationships, and faces life with renewed courage. But the journey is not over, and new challenges continue to test his evolution. Final transformation and emotional legacy at the end of round 6. Gi-hun undergoes a transformation that goes far beyond physical survival. He emerges as someone who has learned to value each moment, each person, and each choice. This change is not only external but profound, affecting how he sees life, others, and himself. It is the culmination of all the pain, fear, and learning he carried from the beginning. Gi-hun's emotional legacy is revealed in his capacity for empathy and connection with others. He understands the pain of others, values love, and learns to act with awareness. It is a transformation that inspires the audience, showing that even in extreme situations, the human heart can remain whole. His journey also reflects the power of resilience. Each trauma, each loss, and each challenge becomes fuel for growth. Gi-hun does not just survive. He transforms his experiences into emotional strength. It is an example of how adversity and pain can shape character and generate maturity, something that resonates with all of us. It is interesting to note how he reconciles with himself. Gi-hun learns to forgive his past mistakes and to value achievements, no matter how small. This self-forgiveness is crucial to understand that evolution is not linear, but made of ups, downs, and continuous learning. A reflection that the human process is complex yet beautiful. The final transformation also involves moral courage. He faces ethical dilemmas, but now acts with clarity and confidence. The maturity acquired during the game allows him to make decisions not only for survival, but also for principles. This elevates his journey from a simple struggle for life to something profoundly inspiring. Even after winning the games, Gi-hun carries the emotional marks of round 6. But these scars do not define him as a victim. On the contrary, they show that he is capable of growing through pain while maintaining empathy, love, and humanity. This emotional legacy is what remains, touching those who follow his story. The impact of his transformation is also reflected in how he faces the future. Gi-hun now understands that life is unpredictable and that true strength lies in adaptability, relationships, and awareness of one's own limitations. He becomes an example of real overcoming, inspiring anyone who has faced extreme challenges. And so, Gi-hun concludes his journey in round 6 as someone who transcended fears, guilt, and losses. His final transformation is not just about survival, but about a deep understanding of himself and the world. But his story still leaves questions in the air, opening space for reflections on what it really means to live and grow. Gi-hun has taught us that facing fears, dealing with losses, and embracing our own flaws is what transforms any ordinary person into someone extraordinary. But what about you? After following this journey, how do you connect with his story? Which characters do you want me to analyze in the next video? Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue exploring the deep lessons behind each story that seems impossible to believe.